a number of states all across the country where they are working to try to essentially frustrate the ability for voters to weigh in on their choice for elected office. We have the same lawsuits essentially brought here in South Carolina. They sued the South Carolina Republican Party, the state election commission. So we've intervened in that case and have been fighting back against that. And as a matter of fact, the deadline with our election commission here in South Carolina to certify candidates to the ballot just passed this past Friday. And I myself certified we had 7 candidates that we certified to the ballot. And there has been no word, if you will, from the federal judge relative to that filing. This has been sitting basically in their court for a number of weeks now. So it looks like it's going to pass here and not become a problem based on the arguments we put forward. So again, we vigorously work to defend the right of voters here in our state, decide who we put on the ballot. Because in South Carolina, actually, the state parties control who goes on the primary ballot necessarily, not the state.
Yeah, a very interesting point. And again, mentioning voters in this conversation is such a must. And oftentimes left out in media. The lawsuits we're talking about barring Trump from the ballot revolve around the argument he violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the insurrection clause. So the plaintiff in the one in South Carolina in this lawsuit, a man named John Castro, long shot independent presidential candidate, by the way, alleging in the lawsuit, quote, on January 6, 2021, after witnessing a large group of Trump supporters violently attacking the United States Capitol to prevent the lawful certification of the 2020 election results, defendant Donald John Trump provided the insurrectionists with comfort in the form of words of sympathy, unquote. Again, just a pull from the lawsuit. Do you have a response to Castro's argument and how strong that is or is not?
Well, we have responded vigorously in court. And I'll point out, by the way, this is a gentleman who filed to run as a Republican in our primary. He was one of 10 people who filed certification form, filing forms in South Carolina, actually sent us a filing fee, which turned out to be a bad check. So let's just point that out for the record here. He did try to file as a Republican in South Carolina. He tried to pay his filing fee with a bad check. The check bounced. So obviously we did not put him on our ballot. So, I don't know what he is. He is an independent Democrat, fake Republican, whatever he may be. Point is, he is trying to frustrate the will of voters in South Carolina, and we've been able to stop that here in South Carolina.
And apparently got to get his finances in check in the new year.
Right, needs to balance his checkbook.
You got it. Okay, Chairman, while we've got you, if you could just comment on what we've seen out of Maine. The Secretary of State there, Bellows, again, ultimately deciding by herself to remove Trump from the ballot. She went on NPR. The sound's a little long, but we want to play part of the interview for you and get your reaction. Let's listen.
It puts you in the position of weighing a really serious question with big consequences that's in front of a lot of state courts right now, and that is this question of whether the attempt to overturn the election and what happened on January 6th was insurrection. How did you think about that key question?
So I reviewed very carefully the hearing proceedings and the weight of the evidence presented to me at the hearing. And that evidence made clear, first, that those events of January 6, 2021, and we all witnessed them, they were unprecedented, they were tragic, but they were an attack not only upon the Capitol and government officials, but also an attack on the rule of law, on the peaceful transfer of power. And the evidence presented at the hearing demonstrated that they occurred at the behest of and with the knowledge and support of the outgoing president. And the United States Constitution does not tolerate an assault on the.
All right, cut out right at the end there. But Chairman, just your overall take and her analysis of what happened on that day.
First off, what she has done is an attack on the right of voters. Okay, let's just stipulate that to begin with. And not to mention, this is coming from someone who was a lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union, a very liberal organization, who's never been elected by voters in Maine, by the way. She was appointed by the legislature in Maine, and she's trying to substitute her will for the will of voters in that state. And let's also point out that the charges that she's claiming the president was guilty of are federal charges, which he was never, one, charged with, or number two, never been convicted of. So that's a federal crime that she's trying to reference and trying to say that he's guilty of and therefore should not be on the state ballot, which is just complete garbage to begin with as a legal argument.